Hi, everyone. Lior is here with another Jumpstart Lightning episode. Today, I have a very special guest. I have Thomas to talk to me about metadata tags and Azure Arc-enabled servers and how everything fits together. So we're going to have a great episode. Stay tuned. Let's do this. Hi, everyone. Lior is here with another Jumpstart Lightning episode. Today, I have a very special guest. I've been a guest on his show for many, many times, and today we get a chance to have him in the Jumpstart Lightning. So, Thomas, how are you, sir?
Thank you very much, Lior. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm doing pretty well. I hope you too.
I am. I'm impressed by your Christmas sweater, your vintage Windows 95 Christmas sweater. Thomas, you've been involved in the hybrid space for a while now. You can say that. But for those of you who don't know you and what is it that you do, can you share that with the audience?
Absolutely. So I'm a cloud advocate at Microsoft, and I work mostly, as you mentioned, in the hybrid cloud space. So I deal with server, Azure Stack, and obviously also Azure Arc-related stuff. And the main thing I'm doing is creating and delivering content about to make our customers more successful with Azure, as well as obviously gathering feedback and finding out what is working for customers, what is not working, to actually improve our products.
Yeah, and Thomas, obviously, I'm sure that some of the audience already know that you and I we've been working together a lot, doing tons of sessions and streaming and all that jazz. So I'm happy to have you here on the show to talk to me about some cool things. So a few weeks back, you shared with me that you did something cool with metadata tags in the context of AWS and GCP and how everything fits together into Azure Arc-enabled servers. And I think that before we'll move into the demo section that you prepared. I wanted to talk to you about the motivation of doing that and why you actually went by and start exploring that area. So can you share that with me?
Yeah, so absolutely. So as you know, like if you're using the Azure control plane, like Azure Resource Manager, for all your cloud resources, you have these tools like to basically group VMs in resource groups and use descriptions and
Yeah.
so on. And you also have tagging, right? So you have tagging capabilities. So we have a lot of customers using these to tag their resources, for example, like different cost centers or applications, or for example, for servers, we see customers doing like different update groups
Hmm.
and so on. So tagging is a really good way of doing that. And it's actually just a key value pair you're freely to design. And one thing we got to ask is like, okay, so Azure Arc enabled servers not just allows me to onboard servers from on-premises environment, but also from other cloud
Right.
providers, right? And so one of the challenges there is that some customers who are in a multi-cloud environment, they already have certain information stored in the control plane of
Hmm.
GCP or AWS.
Hmm.
Um, and actually, that is information we want to have in the Azure Resource Manager control plane, right? And with Azure Arc, we can actually get that information into the control plane.
Right. You know, one of the things that I'm always finding amazing, especially now working on a lot of content that's got to do with how customers are adopting Azure Arc in the notion of best practices and what are the things that they need to take under consideration. One of the things that I always find amazing that how many people are actually not leveraging tags, and tags are it's a fundamental building blocks for everything that's got to do with governance first and foremost, right? And it's also one of the things that are easiest to implement. It's not hard at all. It's literally a matter of seconds, and I always find it amazing. So I think that it will be interesting to see kind of what the approach that you took around bringing those tags into an Azure Arc enabled servers environment, and how does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I agree with you. The usage like this, especially coming from people who have probably not have crazy used Azure, because if you're really using Azure and do all that governance and security and automation
Right.
parts around it, there's almost no way you cannot use tags, right? Because you want to have some additional information stored with these cloud resources. And now for Arc, again, you can do that and you can define that. That's built in. You can tag your resources.
Right.
But again, as we talked about it, the challenge is, okay, how do I get this information from this other cloud provider VM instance, which is already there, into the Azure control plane in an automated fashion, right? I
Yeah.
don't want to do that for all the VMs all the time, like manually.
Right. That's
I really
tedious.
want
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So
Mhm.
that is what I was working on.
All right.
Now, we can have a look at it if you want to.
Yeah, let's take a look.
So how do I get actually this information? And I was thinking a lot. I worked with a couple of people from the field to
Mhm.
to like figure out how is this working. But one of the things I realized fairly quickly is that depending on the admin you are, you probably only have access to the server operating system itself, right?
Mm.
Very often you don't have access to all the servers on the other cloud providers control
Mhm.
plane, right? You
Mhm.
probably cannot see it. You don't have all the, which is makes sense, right? You're not every um, IT admin needs to have access to all of that. So we are actually going to do the following. While we are onboarding the Azure Arc agent on the machine itself, like a machine running in AWS or GCP,
Mhm.
we're going to use their metadata service,
Mm.
which is basically a REST API. We have the same thing, by the way, for Azure VMs,
Mhm.
uh, where you can get some additional information, such as like what's the instance name, in which region, for example,
Mm.
is this server running, right? And so this is all information we can gather from that metadata service.
Mhm.
And again, there's a ton more. I can show that in just a bit. But then during the onboarding process, we actually like gather this information, and then we during the onboarding process to Azure using the Azure Arc agent,
Mhm.
we send that information across and create these tags.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that it's interesting. You made a very interesting comment around depends what type of admin you are, what type of permissions you may have. But that's the thing. Like the guest operating system is somewhat the most basic I want to say access that you can have as an admin. I understand the notion of maybe not having access to you know all the bells and whistles that the cloud platform is offering, and you may have the less restricted kind of approach with not giving people what they shouldn't get. But I think that the operating system, yeah, like you mentioned, it's the basic permissions that an admin should have. So I'm excited to see how you made that bridge come into life.
Absolutely. And I just quickly wanted to add, of course, there's absolutely like also a way we could actually automate this and run scripts against the control plane, right? And that's
Yeah.
absolutely also a good thing to do if you have enough rights, if it makes sense for this scenario. However, as you mentioned, in some scenarios, we don't even have access to that control plane, right? And
Hmm.
or sometimes just a small business unit from a company wants to take over these servers and put it in.
Yeah.
But let me show you how it's done.
Yeah. Let's do this.
So I'm going to quickly look into the portal here. I just want to quickly show what we're actually going to do, right? So I already have a server here. This is now an on-prem server, but I'm going to show you that with an AWS machine in just a bit. And you
Hmm.
can see this is an Arc-enabled server. And what I have done here is basically I just have added a couple of tags, like with which data center is running and so on, right?
Hmm.
So I did that while I onboarded the machine, and that is great, right? But now let's have a look at the automated fashion. So here I'm in an AWS machine,
Hmm.
and just to quickly show you the metadata service. Again, this is a REST API. I can
Right.
actually list this like using PowerShell here.
Hmm.
Again, this also works obviously for Linux machines as well. But you
Yeah.
can see here I can get a couple of things I can actually go on and have a look at. For example, like IP addresses, placement, and security groups. It is obviously very related to the AWS environment.
Right. Right.
But for
Right.
example, if I tag this and I go actually into placement, then I can see here things like availability zones and
Mm.
regions. And obviously, in my case, I'm interested in which region is that AWS VM, right? So I
Hmm.
get the AWS region here. And now I basically can get all that information and a lot more
Hmm.
from that metadata service.
So, Thomas, let's connect the dots here for a second. I think this is a super important one because if you're thinking about right Azure Arc-enabled servers and what is it that you can do with that, the one thing that we always saying is that Azure Arc-enabled servers is really a gateway for doing governance, security, compliance, and management at scale for resources that are deployed outside of Azure by bringing them into our control plane. Right? That was always the 2 cent, the pitch, the value prop. I think that if you are thinking about the tags notion, right, and you're starting to group together type of resources, let's just say Azure Arc-enabled servers that are deployed as EC2 instances on AWS, this is the point that you can start using tags, for example, with Cloud Defender or Azure Policy against a specific set of resources and actually go from just the auditing or the fleet management aspect and move that or move to the world of remediation. That's really where that bridge is coming to life. So I definitely see the value in doing that. So just wanted to share that. I think that this is pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you're absolutely right. I mean, with tags, I can automate so many different processes, right?
Yeah.
So the next thing I want to do here is obviously, as an example, I want to take two information points here I get from this metadata service. So one is the the AWS region. So I'm going to save that in a variable, and then I'm going to save the instance ID of that system also in a variable. So those are the two information. Again, I could do much, much more, obviously, but those are the two things I want to add, right? The next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put a little bit more tags on it. So, for example, like things I want to add as information is like this is AWS onboarding. I can also say, okay, I want the country to be onboarded. And then you can see here, I add the variables here with some information. So you can extend this as you want. Depending on what you want to add. Also very static things, like again, this is the data center AWS tag, for example, is very static in this case, but then also some of them which are basically done by PowerShell.
Got it.
So I'm going to save that. And what I already have done, I already saved a couple of credentials to basically like the service principals to onboard the Azure machine. So I don't need to log in and stuff, and I don't need to show you the service principal.
Right.
And from there on, what I'm going to do here is I'm actually just going to run almost the normal onboarding script we do with some slight modifications here to actually do that. So here we're going to start the onboarding. This will download the Azure Arc agent and install the Azure Arc agent. And as soon as this is done, this will take a couple of seconds.
Let's just share, let's just share with the audience. This is an AWS machine that were never onboarded as an Azure Arc-enabled server, right? This is the first time that this machine is being installed with the connected machine agent and all the tags that you incorporated as part of the automation that you built for that, right?
Absolutely correct. Yes. So again, this will take a moment. It will install the agent, and then it runs now. After the agent is installed, you can see here it uses the the Azure Connected Machine Agent.exe to actually run the onboarding. Right. And I want to quickly, before you see, it's already done. It's already onboarded now. But I want to quickly show you a couple of things here. So obviously, as I mentioned, I use a service principal to onboard in that case. Again, you could also use your Azure login if you want to, but then you need to enter your credentials. There's nothing different there. But what I'm actually doing here is this one is the tags parameter where I actually put in the tags, right? So that is basically all the magic. It's not that much magic there, but it is a little
but it
bit.
is powerful. It is powerful. So how does that look like in the Azure portal?
So let's go back to the Azure portal here. Just give me a second to go here. And if I go now, let's open up this instance here. And I go to Azure Arc. I go now to servers. And what happens is here, now you can see here that this is my AWS machine I just connected. I can also go back and quickly show you the host information, but this is actually what it now did. As I showed you, we already gather some information, like cloud provider, it automatically detects that it's an AWS machine. But I can also add that using the tags, and you can see here now it did automatically take the AWS region, which I just showed you, the EU Central One, and basically added that.
And I think Thomas, I think that the region thing, and that's exactly what, the point that I was trying to make around remediation, because if you're thinking about how you should think about managing Azure policies, right? A lot of the time, these Azure policies are created in the context of compliance, in the context of a certain set of policies that assembling a specific compliance. A good example might be I don't know, GDPR or HIPAA or stuff like that. And a lot of the time, it's also something that you can use or identify based on the region of the resource that you are trying to apply that policy or remediate that resource based on that policy. So this is where I think that this is becoming reality. So pretty
Yeah,
cool.
absolutely, absolutely. Again, and this tag now, I mean, if you're not familiar with tags so much and you haven't used it, then we'll say, well, it's nice, it's just there, right? But as you
Right.
mentioned, this can now be used in various different places. So if I go, for example, to the all resources page or something like that, I
Yeah.
could actually go out and filter and list all my servers or VM instances running in this AWS region. I
Yeah.
could then go out, if I have use multiple AWS regions, I could actually nicely group them, list them, and then run automation
Yeah.
against them, script around it, right? And I guess, as you said, also use policies, for example, to actually like govern these servers, and
Yeah.
depending on, for example, the region where they're in or any other attribute.
I'm loving it. All right. So, Thomas, I think this is this is one of those demos or type of demos that I really like because it's on point. It shows exactly what we're trying to say here. It's short and sweet, so I like it a lot. So, Thomas, obviously, will share. I know that you also worked on the blog post around that in your personal website. So obviously, we're going to share the links in the description below. But I also wanted to ask, or Thomas, for you to share for people that don't know how to reach out to you. Again, I'm not sure who they are, but for those that don't know how to reach out to you, can you share with the audience where do where do you hang most of the time, or how do you get in touch with you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure there are many, many people out there who don't know me. So I feel flattered. So yeah, definitely check out my blog on thomasmaurer.ch. There you can find all this cool information and check out. And again, you can find the links in the description below. I'm also very much on Twitter. So there's also at Thomas Maurer, or find me on LinkedIn as well. Those are usually good places to reach out to me.
Yeah, and obviously we'll share all your social media accounts and maybe bank account in the description below. So Thomas, I really want to thank you for coming to the show. The Jumpstart audience, for those of you who wants to know when we are releasing these type of episodes, new demos, and basically new content that we're coming up with this YouTube channel. So please make sure that you're giving us a big like. It helps support the channel. Also subscribe and hit the bell button so you'll know when we're actually releasing this. We're also coming up with a new content pretty soon around Azure Arc-enabled servers, nuts and bolts series. We're going to explain a lot of things in depth around the architecture of what is happening behind the scenes for Azure Arc-enabled servers. So again, make sure that you're following this. Thomas, listen, thank you. Thanks so much for coming to the show and share your wisdom.
Thank you very much for having me. It was an honor and a pleasure as always, Lior.
Thanks so much, Thomas. And for the Jumpstart audience, we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.